Alright, hello everybody, welcome to another video, a video where I discuss the Nikon Z8 versus the Nikon Z7 II. This video is sponsored by Squarespace, and about 6 weeks ago, maybe a bit longer, I said that I would probably just stick with the Z7 II over the Z8. However, since that time, I have spent 11 days on a ship in Svalbard with this camera, and I've changed my mind. So a couple of things. Firstly, if you haven't seen last week's video where I go on an 11-day photography expedition to Svalbard, please go and watch it. If this video gets more views than that, I'm just going to quit YouTube, because that last week's video is the direction I want to go in. Longer form content, multi-day photography trips into one good video with storytelling, images, and a real passion. I'm not in a position where I can do that, but wouldn't it be nice to just drop one big video every 6 weeks or so? That would be nice. One day we'll get there, but not if people aren't watching them, so please go and watch it. Another thing, the Z8, I was very disappointed when Nikon loaned me this Z8 when it initially got launched, because they said that you have to have a chaperone, which, hey, was Rishi. Great man, top man, nothing against Rishi, but when they say that somebody's got to chaperone you with the camera and you can only have it for one shoot, one morning, no planning, no time, nothing, the opinion that I formed on that day was not favourable towards the Z8, and that's because I'd woke up at 4 in the morning. Rishi had brought me the camera. I'd never seen it, used it. I didn't really know much about it. I got it up onto the Yorkshire Dales, up onto the moors. It was cold. There was no light. It was an uninspirational day for photography. It was pretty drab. And that was my only opportunity to use it. So I was quite literally a man with a camera taking an image. And that might sound daft, but pretty much all cameras on the surface level are the same. Like, you can take a photograph of this camera, the camera I'm recording on, a Sony, a Canon, a Leica, whatever, all the same. You're not going to notice the difference, right? When you look at the actual image. So that was my thing. I got this camera, it was a camera, and I took a photograph, and my opinion was, it's the same sensor. Get the Z7 II, cheaper, lighter. However, they loaned it me again, which I think is how they should have loaned it me the first time. Actually, saying that makes me sound incredibly arrogant. Of course, I understand they're restricted with pre-production models and whatnot, but I just wish that when I first got my hands on this, I had the opportunity to do a proper trip, and then my opinion would have been different. So it has changed, and I now have to eat my words. So if you're a Z7 II owner, you might be watching this thinking, oh no, my camera's no good. Absolutely not. The Z7 II is phenomenal, beautiful landscape camera, and image quality, image for image, these are matched almost identically. This is a brilliant camera and actually has many advantages over the Z8, such as its size, its weight, and its price point. Especially now, a ton of these are going to be on the used market as people like me go for a Z8, and perhaps sell the Z7 IIs. So this has got to be one of the sort of highest or best value cameras that you can get on the market today. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the Z7 II. I can't stress that enough. It's a phenomenal camera. However, the Z8, for what I do, which is obviously I make these YouTube videos, I do a lot of landscape photography, but I'm really enjoying wildlife photography at the minute as well. In Iceland, I was in Iceland a couple of months ago and shot Arctic foxes. I've just returned from Svalbard with walrus, polar bears, and lots of bird photography and all that kind of stuff. And the Z8 absolutely shined, and I'm going to explain why, because there's not one thing on this camera that makes me want to buy it over the Z7 II. It's all the little things that add up. First and foremost, I was on a boat, it was windy, it was raining, there was sea spray, there was a lot going on where I had to shoot landscapes and then wildlife, so changing lenses all the time. Having this sensor cover just makes all of the difference, and meant that not once did I have to clean my sensor. I was never worried about my sensor. It's a small thing, but it made quite a big difference. The next small thing that makes a big difference is the autofocus. Now, the autofocus on the Z7 II is great and it works most of the time, but it does miss in low light. It can be a bit slow and it's not 100% trustworthy. The autofocus on the Z8 is phenomenal. I used 3D animal tracking for my wildlife photography and it very rarely missed. It would lock onto the subject and stay with the subject. For landscapes, I was on a moving boat using long lenses. often shooting through rain, and the autofocus was fast and it was accurate. And in low light as well, I expect that the Z8 sensor or the processor or something anyway, I'm not entirely sure what the technicals behind it, but the Z8 autofocus is way more reliable. And that's great for things like focus stacking. When you tap the screen to focus, it's going to be very accurate with that. And it's also great if you're fast moving, or perhaps you haven't got the best eyesight, so you rely on autofocus. It's just, so it's more reliable than the Z7 II, which isn't bad, but for me, it has missed, even with landscapes and with wildlife in the past. Z8, I literally don't think it missed once. It was fantastic. One of the things on the Z8 that I was really impressed with, and I would say most impressed with, was the functionality of it, customization of it. So I would have this camera set up so that when I turn it on, it defaults to what I call landscape mode, ISO 64, f11, and then a shutter speed of, I think, 250th of a second. That would pretty much be what this comes on at, with a 2-second timer as well. That's landscape mode. But what if I'm shooting landscapes and then something happens, like the polar bear comes into shot, or a seal pops up on an iceberg, or whatever, or your kids run past and look really cute and you want to photograph your fast-moving kids, whatever. Well, I programmed in a completely different shooting mode into this one button on the front here, function 2. So at the press of a button, it goes from ISO 64 to auto ISO. It goes from shutter speed 250 to the lowest shutter speed, as in it won't drop below 1,000th of a second. And it also goes to the widest aperture of that lens. And it goes to, I believe, 5 frames. That's what I programmed it. 5 frames per second fast burst. So at one press of a button, you go from super slow landscape mode, bosh, wildlife. Oh, and autofocus with 3D animal tracking. Done. And I expect a lot of people who are watching this will probably do more than just landscape photography. You'll do weddings, portraits, events, you'll photograph your kids, you might do wildlife. There's loads of stuff other than landscape photography. And that was always my problem with the Z7 II. It wasn't the best all-rounder. The Z8 is like a phenomenal all-rounder. It truly is. It does everything. And another little thing about this is, of course, we already know it has this tilty screen. It's a little thing, but it adds up and makes the difference. Now, the downsides with the Z8 are the weight is 200 odd grams heavier than the Z7 II, which is a bit of a pain if you go hiking or do any kind of strenuous photography activity, but 200 grams is a compromise that I am willing to make for all of the features in this camera. Another downside is all of these features, if used properly or if used extensively, like I did last week in Svalbard, it is a drain on the battery. The battery is not great when you're shooting wildlife, frames per second, animal tracking, switching from landscape mode to wildlife mode, so on and so forth. So I would struggle to get a full day out of the battery. But I'm used to shooting landscapes. I shoot like 3 images in an evening. I would confidently go on a landscape trip with one battery and think that would last me 5 days, no problem. But if using all of the features in this camera and using it to its full potential, you're going to go through batteries pretty quickly. But you just take spare batteries, no big deal. But that's definitely one thing to bear in mind. Another downside, of course, it's going to cost more than the Z7 II. So that's where you just have to weigh up, is it worth it? And for what I do and some of the trips I have planned going into the future, yes, it's worth it for me to spend more money on the Z8 than the Z7 II. And finally, I'd like to touch on the video features. Now, I don't like to mix video and photography, which sounds stupid as I run a landscape photography YouTube channel, but I always think of them very, very much separate. I have my video gear, which is filming me now, and then I have my photography gear, and the twain shall never meet. But on trips like in Svalbard, having the video feature on this was great. If I was photographing polar bears, I could then flip to video mode and shoot the polar bears and get footage. Now, I don't think I had the video features set up correctly. All I did was switch to video mode, make sure it was 4K, and make sure that it was 24 frames per second, but I didn't adjust the picture profile. And my video footage was contrasty and oversaturated, not good. What I should have done is shot in a flat profile, and that would have given me much more flexibility when editing the video in Premiere Pro. But that's a quick fix. The video features on this are sensational, apparently. I don't know too much about it. I'm not putting any specs or talking about any specs. I'm sure you already know this, but it's nice to be able to take supplementary video footage with the stuff that I do. So it's a nice bonus, but it certainly wouldn't sway me in terms of purchasing it, but it might sway you. Now, on my trip to Svalbard, which, by the way, I did make a 40-minute long epic video that I really encourage you to go and watch. It was last week's video. I'm going to put it in the description below, the link. Please go and watch it. But yes, in that, I've forgotten what I was going to say now. What was I going to say? In that video, on that trip, I still don't feel like I fully utilized all that this camera can do, and I'm sure there is so much more that it can do, and not to mention, no doubt, bit of speculation here, but no doubt all of the firmware updates that will come in the future, I'm sure. So yes, this is the camera, and I'm so glad I got to use it properly, and it's because of that I am purchasing the Z8 over the Z7 II, even though just last month I said that I would stick with the Z7 II. Yeah, that was because I had a bad day and I never really got to use this properly. But if you're a Z7 II owner and you're not switching, doesn't matter, like, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. It's still a fantastic camera, and all of the sort of drawbacks of the Z7 II that I mentioned, they're not proper drawbacks. They're like minuscule. It's not night and day is what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying that the autofocus on this isn't 100%. It's not. It's like 99.2%. It's still very high. So yeah, don't stress too much is basically what I'm saying. Don't worry about it. You're not missing out on too much. But having to use this and being in a position where I do need to buy something, I think I'll probably opt for this. Right, thank you to the sponsor of this video, Squarespace, who help so much with this channel and allow me to go and do projects and shoot videos in the field. So thank you. If you don't know who Squarespace are, they're an all-in-one website building platform. So if you need your own website, but you don't have the skills or the know-how to code your own, well, that's where Squarespace comes in. You log on to Squarespace, you create an account, and you can use their drag and drop system to create a beautiful, professional-looking website really easily with no previous experience or any web building knowledge. If you want to give that a go to squarespace.com/Heaton and you get a free trial. And then if you like free trial, which I'm pretty sure you will, use the offer code Heaton and then you get 10% off your first purchase. So as always, I would definitely recommend Squarespace. But for now, I'm going to go. It's nice doing this video, just having a bit of time off. I'm pretty exhausted after Svalbard and then doing that big long edit. And that's why there's no in-field video from me this week. Just a nice chill one, almost like a podcast. Maybe I should do a podcast. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, cheers, guys. And if you got any comments or suggestions about the Z8, Z7 II off, then yeah, let me know. Appreciate it. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.